happening. Thanks so much. So thank you all for coming to this week's Shelter in Studio. My name is Sarah Sonker, and I'm the Program and Studio Manager at the San Francisco Center for the Book. Today we're talking with Mark Sarigianis. He's the proprietor of the Prototype Press, formerly located in Oakland, California, and recently moved to Southern Maryland. Mark worked for several years as the typecasting apprentice at the Arion Press in San Francisco, and as the Book Arts Program Studio Manager at Mills College in Oakland. He started Prototype with fellow Arion casterman David Johnston as a letterpress job shop and fine book publishing operation. And these days, he's focusing solely on book work. So I'm gonna spotlight you, Mark, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, welcome to the new home of the Prototype Press. As of January of this previous year, I moved the family and the shop. It was about 48,000 pounds worth of machinery and metal from Oakland into a bunch of pod containers and out here to a little piece of land in Southern Maryland with kind of a fixer-upper house and garage, but the 3-car garage looked like it could house, the new press, at least for a little while getting started before we have to fill out more space. And so I'm in there right now. Does double as the tool shop, but I'll give you a quick tour around in a little bit and show you all the different machines and kind of the process I go through with making books. Because currently that is the singular focus of the press. It's just me, and I'm casting, printing, and binding an edition roughly once every 2 years for sale. And I don't particularly need to do anything else, which is kind of nice these days. That's all. Everything in here is very much specifically designed for that purpose. We started roughly 7 years ago under the Sharp Teeth Press moniker with David Johnston in Oakland or in San Francisco, and then quickly moved to Oakland and started acquiring more toys with the purpose of job work and book work. He unfortunately passed away in 2015, and since then, right before then, we had transferred to the Prototype Press as our new moniker, and since then it's just been me holding down the fort and kind of pushing the press just in a simpler but similar direction as where we were both headed. The writing was on the wall in Oakland, whereas I couldn't envision staying there long term with the rental situation and the fact that there was so much equipment that we need to make books in the way that we wanted to make them. So the idea of moving in town, possibly multiple times over the years, as I watched other print shops do very similar things right around me, having to pack up and move down the street. The press never makes enough money, or that's not really a very easy thing for us to do. And so I slowly was planning an escape back towards where I grew up and where my family lives here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and bit the bullet very luckily in January of last year, not knowing at all what was going to unfold. And it was a miracle we did, because so many people, including people on this chat, helped me pack this stuff up, which was a monster job. And if it was 1 month later, I don't know if I could have gotten the hands to take that all on. So we got out in the nick of time, drove across, and started unpacking. This garage was completely hollowed out, just a shell, just a cinder block foundation, concrete pad, and then wooden studs. And the first thing we realized getting in here was, as the spring turned to summer, was we're not in the East Bay anymore, and temperature and humidity control are an extreme concern for the machines and for me. And this garage in June started to heat up to about 120 degrees, and that was not very sustainable. So we went to work with a lot of help from my dad and my brother, insulating and covering the walls and putting up a ceiling and insulating the attic there and putting fans in so that we could maintain some get the water out of the air, really, to make sure that these machines didn't start just to rust away. And then you'll see a little in the corner there, a little HVAC unit that doubles as my heat in the winter time, because although it's fairly nice today, it does get into the 20s at night for a few months here. So I do have to keep this place heated up. I have a water line running from a bathroom that thankfully I inherited here, because the casting machines need water and I can't have the water lines freeze. So this place does have to be kept at a certain temperature. And so here we are. It took about 8 months to get everything powered up. When the machines got in pretty immediately, but I had access to 3-phase power at American Steel in Oakland, and out here that's not the case. And a few of the machines that now I have that are gas had to be converted to propane because we're just a little off the grid here. So kind of have to deal with propane and deal with just standard power, not commercial power. But thankfully, nothing we have is too big that makes that impossible. And so I started working on a new book. I had it in the works before we moved, thankfully, and I had the rights acquired to do an edition of MFK Fisher's Consider the Oyster. This is a compendium of hers, but I'd always been fascinated by this little book she wrote, just pontificating about all things oyster related, and anything seafood related is in my wheelhouse. So that was a good project to have ready to go, and I just needed the monotypes to be cranked on before that could start. So that starts the process right here. So these are the 2 monotype composition casters that we brought along with us. You'll see the computer controlled casting part of the operation here. The computer that I'm using now actually talks to that interface there and tells that machine this is a matrix case here, so it tells that machine which coordinate on this matrix case that it needs to go to cast. In this case, it's 12-point Gaudi light, and we had to do a few conversions here to get a new motor and get everything hooked up, but it seems to be running okay. The second caster in the corner is getting tempted to get turned on. It hasn't happened yet. But so the Consider the Oyster started with about just programming 60 galleys of type on the Macintosh computer, formatting it the way it needed to read out and look, and then casting. And that took the better part of the summer, was just casting that part of the book and some 10-point material and some smaller material for different sections. And I just got done reading those proof pages, which I'll show you here. So these are the proof pages of the book, all the different galleys. I was able to read with someone over Zoom, which was kind of nice this year. I used to do it in person, but that worked out fairly well for me to look at my copy and somebody else on the phone to look at a copy like I have here, the already printed version. Make my corrections, and I'm getting ready to break it down into pages, and the paper should be on its way shortly. For the past several books and for most of the future books, we're kind of always hoping to use handmade paper, in particular from Saint Armand in Montreal. They've been making my paper for a while now, and so I'm able to custom order a handful of different things once or twice a year, and I like the work they do. So hopefully that should be in shortly. The artwork is being done by a teacher and carver at Pratt University, Martin Mazzora. And I don't know if anyone's heard of the Outlaw Printmakers group, but he's part of the Outlaw Printmakers, a bunch of carvers who loosely sell under one name, but also represent themselves otherwise. He's also part of Cannonball Press. If anyone's ever heard of Cannonball Press, they do some wonderful posters. And I actually heard about them when I was in college. Gosh, 15 years ago. I saw posters of them in my printmaking studio where I went to college at Old Dominion. So it's been a long time coming, and I happened to run into him at a book fair at the very beginning of last year. And thankfully, he really likes oysters, and he was into that entire concept. And so he's on board. And I just received most of the illustrations from him. I accidentally left them in the house, but they look great, and they'll probably be printed last after the text. And so this book will be done. So the goal is to do all of the recipe names and the chapter headings in a different color, printed on one of two presses here. So I'll take you to the.
Mark,
Yep.
will you hold the proof up in front of the camera just a little bit closer to the screen and hold it still for a few seconds so people can see?
Sure.
Cool. So you're saying that chapter title will be
Chapter titles, and I guess let me see if I have a recipe. Yes. Chapter titles and recipes are going to be printed in baby blue.
why baby blue?
Sorry, what was that?
Why baby blue?
Well, I'm going to do the rest in gray, like a medium gray for the text, and baby blue for the titles, and just to kind of get the ocean rock vibe as oysters are. Which has been reading about oysters for the past 7 months has been kind of like, the summer was hard because there's not a whole lot of oysters around here during the summer, but once the winter hit, I kind of been going nuts and exploring the southern Maryland region and eating lots and lots of oysters as I've found. I have some in the fridge right now. But yes, lots of grays, lots of light blues. That's definitely the colors of this region.
Thanks.
So the press room side here. So we have, here is the large Vandercook. This was David Johnston's 3228 that he bought in San Francisco and had in his garage. That has been the workhorse for many years now, because just due to its size, most of the books we've done have been on the larger side, and I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I like making big books. And so the press bed on that is 32 by 28 inches. So that has been the workhorse for this. This book will be, I'll show you so this is the actual size of the page. And so this actually will fit on both presses, because the other one that we brought with us was the 1915 John Thompson 1422. And that beast was the worst to get in here. I'll never move that again. But that press will be printing the baby blue on the chapter headings and the big press for the gray text. And it's just me out here. I don't have any assistants or any extra hands, and I plan on printing the book damp, so I'll be dampening paper the night before for each form. So my hope is that I'll just go from, literally walk from one press, print the gray, have the other form locked up and inked up with baby blue, and I'll just walk to the other press and just turn the machine over by hand and print the blue, and then put those pages in a bag just to keep the moisture level regulated through the whole printing process, and then just get signatures done and finished at the end. And it worked out previously for printing the illustrations at the end separately on the big press, so I think I'll keep with that going as well. But those are the two presses that came with us, and
Mark,
Yep.
Ludwig wants to know if that's Peter Koch's press.
The Vandercook? Or the Colt? Well, neither one, but.
Well, there's your answer.
This Julie Holcomb, no, is it Julie Holcomb? Brian, correct me here. Who had the Vandercook before? I believe it was Julie Holcomb who had that press before, and this big Colt came from Glenn Bowder. Yeah, they all have their histories. No one ever wanted the big press. That's always been kind of the joke, is that that press has traded hands many times over the decades, and no one seems to want to keep it other than me. And I understand why after using it for all these years. It is a very tricky beast in the inking mechanism and in the squareness. Once you get to a size this big, it just, things are always out of tune no matter how much you tune them. So it is not the most fun press to use, but it prints very big and it prints very well when it is working correctly. So that is the forever Vanderclick as long as it still keeps chugging along. So, and that's the printing side. That's the plan for the Oyster book coming next. And then it will move on to binding, and I'll kind of take the shop around and show you the other side. All right. So this is the other side of the press room, and I have just composing banks over there to do work with the metal type, paper cutter, and board shear, which was a recent acquisition, which I really needed for this next project. I'll be making, it's an edition of 50, and I'll be making 50 clamshell boxes for the Oyster book, which seems to make sense, and it will be more technically complicated box work than I've ever done in the past. So I was very desperately needing a board shear because in the past I've always had access to them. The Bay Area has so many printers and binders that, you know, specific tools you usually could borrow or, you know, go use on occasion. But out here, I'm pretty alone as far as print shops go. I know of one engraving shop about a half hour from here, and otherwise it's not very well, it's very rural and there's just not too many people doing these kind of things. So with a board shear now, I can kind of take on box making by myself, which is very helpful.
Mark,
and yep.
Have you said what the edition size is for the Oyster book?
So yeah, I'll do an edition of 50 for this, which is probably too many, but
50.
Yeah, 50. It's funny, all these, when it always happens this way, but just once the rights acquisition part of the process starts, it ends up, you know, like it is now, 2.5 years later before I'm getting ready to print a page. But that's just kind of how it goes. So 50, if I would have said now, I wish I was doing an edition of 30, but 50 is how it has to be, and we will get it done.
And what's Martin's last name?
Mazorra, Mazorra, I believe.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Trying to think where from there. So yeah, binding will happen next. I do need this whole shop, just like in Oakland, I had to kind of convert the whole shop from a typecasting and printing operation to a binding operation. All the surfaces basically get bookboard laid on top and taped down because I have to take over every space for folding and drying, and I'll get some clothes hangers put up in here so we can hang the paper to dry. And yeah, we'll change dramatically at that stage, and we'll see how far we can get through the edition before the next book eventually creeps up, which is hopefully next year.
So just to be clear, when you showed us that MFK Fisher compendium, you're not printing that whole thing, you're printing one short.
One short story. I think it's 80 pages in that edition. Mine's a little lot more negative space than mine, so the pages will be stretched a little more. It's bigger type, bigger paper, bigger everything. Yeah, I guess it's nonfiction, but it's like the size of a novella, which is great. Which is great for this press can kind of, at this point with the machines, which is nice, we can handle a big book. We can handle another Bukowski, the previous publication, and the more recent typecasting acquisition was these two Thompson typecasting machines, along with a healthy supply of matrices. And what these machines will allow me to do in the future, not this project, but I'm hoping on the next one, which I haven't really been able to do how I wanted to before, was cast large type 18 or 24 points for filling up multiple cases, and then hand setting a book with as much type as I need, just casting as much as I need for the entire project and hand setting many, many pages at a time. That would be, hopefully the next project, that's the direction it will go, and this machine kind of lets me do that and makes good type. It recently got turned over for the first time, and type was expelled from it. These are some very small little ornaments that we had to do a tester on, but as far as I can tell, it's a fairly fresh machine that I've had stored for many years.
Can you run down the casters? If you're looking
Sure.
at them from left to right, what we've got?
So we got 4 casting machines in here right now. This right here is, these are both Thompson type casters. This one, I'm pretty sure hasn't run in 50 or 60 years. Even at the place I got it from, another type foundry, it was not used there. It was just a backup caster. The parts are there, but I assume it was just kept as a parts caster if necessary. And my general rule is to have 2 of every machine, because inevitably I have to take them all apart down to shreds, and I always want one machine that looks correct to then put everything back properly. It's very helpful. It's come in handy too many times. So that's the one that's always going to hopefully stay like that. And this machine here is the actual functioning one. And that's the one I'll use indefinitely. And I can cast, I think I have the capacity to cast 10 point to, I believe, only 36 point as far as the parts go on this thing. But that should do me fine. After that, we have the computer controlled composition machine. So this will just do for me, because this is a particular machine that's not capable of doing large comp as it is. So this machine will do 8, 10, and 12 point composition for me, which is often the grunt work. So that's how that machine will stay. And then this machine down here was the original casting machine. This is they called it a combination machine. So this machine actually has the capacity to be tweaked and turned around to cast larger type and to be used as a composition machine as well. This came from Monroe Postman in Redwood City, and this was the machine that got Davey and I really thinking about making books on our own for real, because without some way to cast type was the initial reason I came to apprentice in California, was because I wanted to make books and I could never get enough type, and I couldn't afford mountains of type. And so I started calling around all over the country to the few typecasters that there were, asking how do I learn how to use these machines. And eventually someone mentioned Darien Press and M&H Type, and that kind of started my path. So you have to have a means to, for me personally, you have to have a means to make type in order to make the books that I want to make. And so this machine started that process for us, because once we could cast type, bookmaking became, actually feasible financially and just aesthetically how we wanted it to look. And so after that, yeah, all the books fall under that tradition of casting type in-house, printing in-house, and then binding to the most of our ability in-house as well. There's not much I'm outsourcing at this point other than paper making, and there's a chance that might have to change long term. I'm not sure about the status of a lot of paper makers in the US, but it seems very difficult to get your hands on handmade paper these days, and I think it will probably continue to be that way. So possibly one day I might have to make my own paper, but for right now, that's what I'm outsourcing. Everything else I'd like to do around here.
Do you make your own ink?
Don't make my own ink, that's true. But I would like to consider at least trying to make black ink at some point. It doesn't seem too difficult. I'm actually using I don't know if anyone uses Gans ink, Gans, south of the Bay Area. I get custom ink colors from them formulated for letterpress printing. It's always, I really liked it. It's not the cheapest way to go about getting printing ink, but I've always been impressed with how it acts on the presses. So I usually just order custom colors for the book, specifically there. Yeah, I was going to say something else. Oh, so one more casting machine that will be happening next month is I will be acquiring an Elrod strip casting machine. So that every line of type has to be divided up with a piece of leading. And this book, unfortunately, I was like 3/4 of the way through, and I started to run out of letters, and run out of leading, which is the first time that's ever happened. But I think after so many books and so many cuts on them, I've slowly kind of burned out my supply. I used to go up to Pat Ray's up in Sebastopol and use his Elrod and melt down all the scrap I had around the shop. But yeah, this book maxed me out, and so I was immediately frustrated, and it was a big pain trying to cut pieces of leading to try to do it. And I just decided that was not going to be a long-term sustainable solution. And I do have an Elrod in Austin, Texas, and the plan is next month to go down there and pick it up from him and move it back in here, which should be a big adventure. But I have a second kiddo on the way in April, and I have been saying to myself that there's no way I'm going to drive to Texas once that second kiddo comes out. I think my responsibilities might prevent me from doing something so foolish, but that's the new plan. So once I have an Elrod in here, I can make my own strip material and books. As far as the metal aspect of books getting put together, I should be able to do all in-house between these machines.
Super self-contained.
Self-contained.
All right, we've got a couple more questions. I know people are interested in the casting process, which would take way more time than we have, but we did do a Shelter in Studio with Brian Ferret and M&H Type several months ago, and that's on the SFCB website if you're interested in learning more about that process. Mark, someone wants to know where it's been X days since the last typo sign is.
Sorry, what was that?
Where's it's been X number of days since the last typo sign?
Where is the currently old one? That is a good question. It did get moved, but that is a good question. It's buried in one of these drawers that I took. I guess it got put with a bunch of artwork. Oh, that's a good reminder, though. I'm gonna go on the hunt after this. I can't believe it's not up.
Gotta get that up. I'm sure you don't remember that was my idea.
Was it really?
Davey stole it.
Oh my gosh.
And
there's a few floating around in the Bay Area. If you go and I don't know. I know Aesthetic Union's got one hanging up in their shop. I know there's a few others hanging up all over the Bay Area that are still surviving.
Celine wants to know if you plan to take on an intern or partner at some point to pass it on.
That is it's always been the case. It's getting settled now. I have a grand plan, although I have space out here and the garage is separated. I'm still rather maxed out for space in here. So the long-term plan is to build a little 2-story Amish shed off the side of this and kind of finish it myself and turn the bottom into a bindery so I can get a lot of these cleaner tools out of here. And then put a sleeping quarters up top for both guests and for the grand idea of, yes, eventually having either an apprentice come and be able to stay and not have to, spend any money to come out here and kind of learn stuff, or to get artists out here and have artists do the work for either carving or whatever type of medium they choose for the books, and be able to do it on site here. Right now, it's not really an option. The house we have is tight. There's one little guest room, but for long term, for an apprentice, I feel like someone would have to stay out here, and that needs to happen next before that's the plan. And hopefully one of the kids has some sort of interest in this at some point, but there's plenty of years to think about that one.
Child labor.
Mm-hmm.
Hook them in.
At least get them folding paper.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Mark. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. Next week, we'll be meeting with Matt Runkle, who's a book artist and San Francisco Center for the Book Instructor based in Oregon. So that registration is open now. I hope we'll see you again next week or in another Shelter in Studio soon. Thank you, Mark.
Hey, thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it.